In this video, I'm going to show you how to play the London system. It's one of the best and most flexible openings you can choose with white. It's played at any level. And if you notice, I've highlighted the e5 square. I'm going to show you later why that's important. I'm not going to go deep down in theory in this video. I'm just going to show you all the basic concepts and ideas of the opening. But I've left an article in the description down below so you can check it out if you want to know more about the London system. Now, the London system starts after the move d4, your opponent responds with d5, and now you play bishop to f4. After bishop to f4, your opponent most likely will respond to it knight to f6. And after knight to f6, I think the best way for an intermediate or beginner play to play this position is by playing e3 rather than playing knight to f3. Why? Because e3 always prepares you from the move c5. I'm going to show you later how to play against c5, but now after you play e3, let's say your opponent plays e6, and now your next move should be to develop your knight to f3. After f3, let's say your opponent tries to trade off your bishop. If your opponent tries to do that, you slide your bishop back, and if your opponent takes and you takes back, you might wonder, why would I double my pawns? Because you open your rook. So that's the way to play. But let's say your opponent doesn't castle, but doesn't take, but either castles. After your opponent castles, you can play a bishop move either to e2 or to d3. And after this, let's say your opponent plays knight to c6. After knight to c6, you can castle, for example, and let's say your opponent plays this move, and you play either knight to d2, or you can play c3 to solidify the center. Now, if your opponent plays a move like this, like queen to e7, or either moves the rook to this line, it always prepares the e5 move for your opponent. Now, as I highlighted in the beginning, the e5 square is the most important for the London system. So if you see a move like this, always bring your knight to the center. Now, let's say a trade like this occurs. Now, it's great for you because let's say your opponent slides back. You can always have open lines, attack on the same side that your opponent is castled, even move your queen here and do something like this. You can attack on the king side and you can actually beat your opponent pretty nice. You can move your bishop in some positions, not here because the queen takes, of course, but you're gonna have some more experience after you play a couple of games. But let's say your opponent does not reply with d5, but rather replies with knight to f6. Now, knight to f6, King's Indian defense. How to play against King's Indian defense? Again, you play bishop f4, and most of the times your opponent will play g6. Now, you can still play the same way, let's say knight to f3, and now after your opponent moves the bishop, you can do normal developing moves. You can play c3 again, you can play e3, or what I recommend is King's Indian players really hate this bishop being traded off, and that's not what they want. So you can play a move like this and try to trade this bishop off, because if you trade this bishop off, that's really not a position that a King's Indian player wants. He's not prepared for it. But yeah, that's the other idea. Now, if your opponent after bishop f4 plays c5, against c5, always e3. You might want to look at some lines because it's a bit more complicated dealing with c5. But again, normal development, let's say something like this. And again, the basic concepts are still the same. That's pretty much enough for your intermediate player, let's say until like 13, 14, 1500, you don't need much more to just start playing the London system and the opening and figure it out by playing. If this video was helpful, please leave it a like and subscribe. I appreciate all the comments that you might leave. And leave a comment down below if you want to see a certain opening. Check out my videos. I've made a video about the King's Indian and how to play it. And see you in the next video.